Hey folks, it's Jeremy, the host of Blammo. Thanks so much for listening. This is a preview of one of our exclusive shows on Patreon. These are member-supported shows, meaning they only happen because of our incredible members and community. So check out a preview of the episode, and if you like it, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/Blammo, where we have tons of exclusive Blammo episodes, shows, our amazing Slack group, and we're adding new things for members all the time. If not, no worries, we still love you, and we literally have hundreds of episodes of Blammo all free for you to dive into. Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Workwear podcast. My name is Derek Guy, and my co-host is Peter Zotolo. So this episode has been a long time coming. I think it was last year sometime when I wrote an article for Mr. Porter about how to dress if you're a larger guy. And for the article, I interviewed Ethan Newton of Brycelands, Tony Sylvester of AWMS, but also of Brycelands, and David Lane, founder of David Lane Design. I've known David now for, I think, over 10 years from Style Forum, and he's someone I've admired forever because he's one of the rare guys that has both a really good tailored wardrobe and a very good casual wardrobe, in his case, revolving around workwear. And for that reason, I often feature him in my Twitter threads about how to dress, not only if you're a larger guy, but just general kind of style inspiration and style advice. I've wanted to have him on the pod forever, partly to discuss how to build a wardrobe if you have a larger figure. And also, since his company, David Lane Design, makes handmade leather watch straps, they even did a collaboration with Hodinkee, I think, many years ago. I've also wanted to have him on the pod to discuss how to find a watch for different types of wardrobes, and what kind of considerations you should, or what dimensions you should consider when choosing a watch strap for a watch. So this episode is pretty long, I admit. It's about 2 hours, but it basically centers on all three of those topics. Let's dive in.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, Peter.
How are you? It's good to see you.
It's great to see you.
We have a guest today.
We do. His name is David Lane. He's someone who I reference very often on Twitter. And he's also someone that I wrote an article about months ago. I wrote an article about how to dress larger figures. And I interviewed him, our friends Ethan Newton and Tony Sylvester over at Brycelands. And the article was really popular, I'd like to think. And so I thought we'd bring David onto the pod to discuss a whole bunch of things. Welcome to the pod, David.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I should say we have a fourth guest, which is a crow in my backyard. So guests can also appreciate the fact that a crow hangs around me at all times. So I did this article with you months ago, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it, partly because there's not a lot of information on how to dress if you're a larger guy. But one thing that I also noticed, and this is something that I'd like for listeners to kind of keep in mind as we go through this pod, is that I really struggled to get what I felt was very specific advice for how to dress larger guys. When I interviewed you, Ethan, and Tony, I have to admit, I felt like a lot of the advice applied to everybody. Like it was just very good advice, regardless of your build. So for listeners who are, kind of tuning into this pod, much of this advice, I think, applies to a lot of people, not just larger guys.
I guess we can ask David's process in trying things on and going through his ready to wear versus MTM versus Bespoke, and because there may be some individual things that he's gone through that may resonate with those with a larger build.
Yeah, that's probably I don't want to start all the way at the beginning, but I would say for a bigger guy, it's pretty discouraging right out of the gate. You imagine you go into a store, you see some cool stuff, you're interested in it, and probably on average 80 to 100% of the options aren't going to fit. So right away, you're like, oh, I'm faced with this sort of loss of options.
That's a large percentage. Wow. 80 to 100%.
Yeah. I mean, some stores I just know that nothing's really going to fit, but I still like what they do and the styles that they have and, the different fabrics, different textures. And so it's still a good learning experience to go into a store, feel the fabric, pick things up, feel the weight, see how it drapes, see how it wrinkles, that sort of stuff. But when I really first started, and just for the purposes of this conversation, I'll kind of stick with tailoring just because I think it's a little more specific, and I think people can glean a little bit more from that.
Okay.
I started with ready to wear, and really O'Connell's was the only option I had to be able to fit in anything. They carried up to, I think, a 56 or 58 chest, which is pretty massive.
And O'Connell's is near you, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm in Rochester, New York. O'Connell's is in Buffalo, and it's a traditional shop, so like a trad shop. So they've been around since the 50s, and they have sort of classic traditional, imagine blue blazers, green and brown tweeds, gray flannels. They have good quality classic pieces, but
sounds awesome.
But everything is flap jetted pockets, hook vent, which is the single vent in the back. And I really wanted, double pleats in the back. I wanted, or double vents in the back, excuse me. I wanted patch pockets. I wanted different cloth. So I started with a made to measure, and I'll kind of go through this quick because I went to, I ordered it. It was a decent amount of money. I went to pick it up, and immediately I couldn't bring my arms more than parallel to my chest.
Wow.
If that makes sense. So like, imagine if I went to hug somebody, the jacket literally held me back. And
not happening.
No. And I had like I had a Tommy Boy moment after about 3 months of owning this thing where I'm like, you know what? To hell with this. I just did a full pull curl in the front and shredded the lining.
You did a Hulk.
I did, literally. But so when I did that, I'm thinking, oh, shit. And I thought I had ripped the back, but I didn't. And when I realized, it's like, oh, it was just the lining that was restricting me. So I ended up wearing it for another like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
You can't really take it off, and like you look inside. I mean, it was a mess inside. Like I had a local seamstress try to patch it, but it was just done. So then I went to another company. So I was like, okay, made to measure's out. We had a local company that does bespoke work, and again, same experience. The jacket was beautiful. The cloth was really nice. It was, I believe, the old Minas blue fresco, that kind of mid blue.
Oh yeah.
And I got my patch pockets, but again, I had a little more room, and it looked great if I was in, the robo pose, which is, standing still. But if I wanted to tie my shoe, I'd literally have to take the jacket off to do that. So after that experience, I'm like, okay, now I've spent some money, I've spent some time, and I need to just figure out what's. And I just did a bunch of research. I figured out, I emailed, I believe, Derek early on back in like 2013, 2014, somewhere around that time. I was like, hey, do you know of any tailors? What's the difference? And I really learned what Bespoke was. And I reached out to Frank Ercole Franco Ercole is the business in Brooklyn. And I went out there. I actually got measured by his father, Ercole, and I went in for the first fitting, and I didn't really know what to expect, but this is where it's a basted fitting, so the sleeves aren't fully attached; they're just loosely attached. They ripped the sleeve off. It's nice drama, but it was I believe is that the forward or the basted? I can't remember.
That's the basted.
Yeah, basted, forward, and then final.
Okay, so the forward fitting was the click. Like I put that jacket on, and I was just like this sounds ridiculous, but I was literally like doing like a freestyle stroke in the air. I'm like, I can move. I can tie my shoes. I could pick up if I dropped a coin, I could do the things that I couldn't do on, in either of the previous coats. And as a result, I just like, oh my God, it was just a wonderful moment. And then the final fitting was wonderful. We did, it was actually a cloth that Derek organized, the brown fresco. It was quite a while ago, but
yeah, wow, the tobacco fresco. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah. And I still wear that today. And I haven't had it adjusted. I haven't had it let out. I'm consistently robust. So I've been able to wear it all this time. And it's been great.
Something that surprises me about that story is that, so usually the problem with, if you're a larger guy and if you're going to made to measure, usually the problem is that as many people know, and they've probably heard me repeat on previous podcasts, is that made to measure, you're creating the client's pattern by adjusting a block pattern. And you can only adjust the block pattern so much before you have to create a new pattern, which of course they're not going to do for you in made to measure because they have to keep their profit margins. And the difference with Bespoke is that while Bespoke tailors sometimes, or actually somewhat commonly nowadays, do work with block patterns, if you cannot be accommodated by the block pattern, then they essentially are supposed to draft you a completely new pattern. But what's surprising about that story is that I would have thought that OConnells would have a block pattern for larger guys, since, as you noted, they have ready-to-wear sizes that go up to 56. That's the other difficult thing with when you're a larger guy. What you'll often see is when you go into a store, they may have a size 44. Sometimes they might have a size 46. But what they're supposed to do as they climb up the sizes is that at a certain point, they should just draft a new base pattern. So when a company is designing ready-to-wear, they'll do a pattern for, let's say, like a size 38 or 40 chest, and then they'll grade up and down to get sizes, 42, 44, 36. But after a certain size, they're supposed to create a whole new pattern because you can only grade so far before the proportions get thrown off. And what I think is promising about OConnells is that since you see them go all the way up to 56, you know that, if you're a size 48 or 50 or 52, they probably did not grade that size 56 from a 38. They probably took the time to create whole new patterns somewhere in between that. So you're probably getting a better fit than you would at some other companies. But what I was saying is that surprising me that since I assume they have new base patterns or new block patterns for these larger sizes, that their made to measure program would not also fit really well.
So I should probably have prefaced that I didn't use OConnells for the first made to measure. I used a different company. But I'll say this because you brought up a really good point, Derek. The grading problem that happens with bigger sizes isn't necessarily the fit. It ends up being the details. So imagine you get let's say they draft a 48 block pattern. They are not redrafting the patch pocket size. They're not redrafting the lapels. They're not redrafting the length of the flap on the pocket if you had jetted flap pockets. And when you have a huge expanse of cloth, especially if you get those 55 or 54, 56, 58 sizes, all of a sudden the details look like this tiny little features on this massive expanse of cloth. And it ends up making you look even bigger. And as a result, that's really where I think the Bespoke takes over, and you get to a point where you kind of get used to it. Like the balance isn't just in the cut and the fit, but the balance is also in the size of the features. The length of the vent, the width of the patch pocket, the depth of the patch pocket, that sort of thing. And that balance really does, I've noticed, makes a huge difference.
Interesting. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are between the made to measure and off the rack. Was there like any difference at all, or was it pretty much the same as far as movability, as far as being able to just do normal things?
The off the rack was better.
Wow. How sad.
Yeah. That's unfortunately the story with so much made to measure is that, you're taking a gamble. People assume that custom is always better, and that's really not the case. I try to stress that in every episode. It's very easy to go into a custom situation and then walk out with a garment that's worse than what you would have gotten ready to wear. So,
that's true.
Yeah. And you bring up another point, but like trying things on with a ready to wear, you can go in the store and you can try on, 5 or 6 different cuts. So like OConnells, for example, they'll use, 4 or 5 different makers for all their different types of jackets and suits. And each one has their own pattern, and each one's going to feel and, sit a little bit different. And then, as you know, when you're getting into this level, things are there's some handmade quality to it. So, they're not going to, each one might fit a little different. So if you have the time to do it, I think just spending the time to try things on is invaluable. I'm going to carry through with the pants because I recently, as I think you mentioned a few weeks ago, I bought some pants from OConnells. And when I went there to do it, I walked in and Ethan's one of the brothers and owner. And I said to Ethan, I go, look, I'm going to be in that dressing room for about an hour and a half, maybe longer. Because I don't know if either of you have been to OConnell's before.
Never. No, I've been meaning to. One of these days I'll go.
Well, if you do, of course, please give me a call. I've got tons of recommendations, all that stuff. But when you walk in there are stacks of trousers 2 to 3 feet high. So, and we're talking stuff from the 60s, stuff from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, all up until new stuff. And when you try on a pair of pants there, a lot of times they've been sitting in that stack forever, and unless you take the time to like dig through them. And so that's what I did. I mean, I wear a 48 waist when it's the higher waisted in my natural waist. And I think I tried on 35 or 40 pairs of pants.
Wow, man.
And every single one looked a little different. And just having I had the time, I had the luxury of the time to do it. They were okay with it. I went at a time where I knew the store wouldn't be super busy. And I ended up buying 2 pairs, but I tried on like I said, 30 or 40 pairs. I mean, I brought the whole stack in. And I think sometimes if you're bigger, you're not always going to have that option. Like you may have 1 or 2 to try, but if you're ever in a position where you can try more, just keep trying stuff on. And even if it's the same size, even if it, just keep trying it on and spend the time looking at yourself in the mirror and recognizing, oh, this is pulling a little bit here. This is holding a little bit tight on the knee. This is blousing at the sides. The pocket is jetting out. Like there's a lot of things that you can look for. And like anything, I look at dressing well as like training a muscle. It's not, some people just fall out of bed looking great, right? Like, good for them. That's awesome. I'm not one of those people. So I've had to train my eye to understand like, oh, this color and texture and pattern works really well with my frame, and this color texture pattern does not. And the more time you spend with it, the more you train that muscle, the easier it becomes. And then all of a sudden you start to feel like, all right, I'm playing the game now. Like I understand it. Like I know the moves that I need to make, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can say, I remember when you first started coming onto the forum and posting your fits with you leaning against the door jamb. I always remember those pictures. But it seemed as though you moved at an accelerated rate. You were able to train your eye very well. I remember some of your Urkel stuff, rest in peace. And it fit you really, really well. And you had the ability to go all the way down to New York. And then you moved on to Frank Shattuck, who does so much. He has a strong silhouette. Let's just say that.
Yep.
But that also looked good on you. That looked phenomenal. Over the course of your trying different tailors, because then you've tried Salvo di Sarti Italiani, you've done Natalino, I think, right?
No, just Sartoria Pistina Elegance.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yep.
Have
Antonio.
you noticed any changes in, you mentioned that you've been training your eye. Are you also being trained in how things should fit?
So it's kind of twofold. So one, it's all about, for me, feeling comfortable. And when I first started out, I wanted things to make me look slimmer, if that makes sense. I wanted to feel like, oh, this jacket's gonna, kind of build up my shoulders and narrow my waist. And as you try to do that, I think it's important to think about it like, I don't want to buy clothes that fit me the best. I want to buy clothes that make me look my best. And by changing that philosophy and saying, okay, as much as I am comfortable wearing, pants below my gut, like, and just wearing them at my unnatural waist, it's easy. I can put a belt on. It just doesn't look as elegant as if I wear higher waisted trousers. And I think, back when I was talking to Derek for the Mr. Porter article, I gave him this story, so I'll repeat it here. But this is early on in my teaching career. I wore high-waisted pants. I had braces on. I had a jacket on, and it's a school, so I teach high school art, and I took the jacket off, and just references, as I'm walking down the hall, I heard, "Look at this Humpty Dumpty looking mother blanker,"
Oh,
and
man.
it's fine. It is their kids. They're gonna do their thing. But in that moment, I'm like, okay, I don't need to invite this, every day for the next 20 years. So I really started having things made to sit below my waist. And what I realized was like, I had a few pair of pants and I always wore them with braces, but I had the waist cut real loose so I could, feel comfortable in them.
Yeah.
But I didn't always want to wear braces. So that was the whole crux of going to OConnells and trying on, 30, 40 different pairs of pants, was just to, can I actually do this? Can I wear pants at my natural waist without suspenders or braces? And I can. And it just took me that time to kind of get acclimated to it. And I've been wearing them pretty much ever since and loving it.
Was there a particular model that you tried on that is a sure fit, or was it just one out of the pile?
Want to hear the rest? Listen to the full episode and many more other exclusive episodes over on our Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Blamo to sign up and join the Blam fam. You also get access to our exclusive members-only Slack group where we chat about this and a ton of other things. So head over to patreon.com/Blamo and we'll see you there.